All right, lesson 14, application of system of linear inequalities. This is going to be word problems, which I know is everybody's favorite. I need to add a note here that you will need some colored pencils for this lesson. I'd recommend four. Number one, you should have done on your own. I gave you your variables. You created a system of equation to solve. Just to check your own work quick, you should have gotten that Whizzle is 184 and Gigit is 185. So then down here, I need you to do these two questions on your own as well. You don't need to solve it, but I want you to rewrite the system of equations to be a system of inequalities. And if it says that Wizzle tells his sister twice your age plus my age is less than 554 years, Gidget says twice your age plus my age is at least 553. Using that, I want you to write a system of inequalities and then just kind of thinking to yourself, would this have a single answer? You got a single answer for each age here, but would this have only one answer? If you've done this first page, raise your hand, get your notes checked, and then we will move on from there. All right, so number two, we have our first word problem here. A clothing manufacturer has 1,000 yards of fabric to make shirts and pajamas. A shirt requires 1 yard of fabric. A pair of pajamas require 2 yards of fabric. It takes 2 hours to make a shirt and 3 hours to make a pair of pajamas. The manufacturer has 1,600 hours available to make some clothing. So our variables here are going to be the number of shirts and the number of pajamas. So I set those as S and P to make that make sense. And then describe the constraints on the values of the variables. So this is where I have things highlighted and I have things underlined to kind of restrict what you're looking at. So the first thing is that both of these have to be positive whole numbers. You can't make and sell half a shirt. You have to make an entire shirt, and you obviously can't make negative shirts or negative pajamas. So that's your first thing. Both of the shirts and the number of pajamas have to be positive integers. And then you're limited by these two things that I have here. You're limited by the amount of fabric and you're limited by the amount of time. So the amounts made are limited by the amount of fabric and the amount of time. So with that, we can write inequalities. The first two are easy. S and P both have to be greater than or equal to 0. That's telling us that they have to be positive. And then you make your linear inequalities based on the other two constraints. So the amount of fabric is going to be 1 yard for shirts, so that would be 1S or just S, and 2 yards for pajamas, so that would be 2P. So 1S plus 2P have to be less than or equal to 1,000 yards because that's the maximum amount they can make. So that's going to be S plus 2P is less than or equal to 1,000. And then our other constraint is the amount of time, 1,600 hours. It takes 2 hours to make a shirt, so that's 2S, and 3 hours to make a pair of pajamas, so that's going to be 3P. 2S plus 3P must be less than or equal to 1,600. And so those are all of our inequalities. There's four of them, hence the four colors. I would maybe write these in pencil, but then underline them in color or write them in color if it makes sense. And then your system of inequalities is going to be the same thing, but we're going to specify where S and P are integers because we know that they have to be positive. So now you have your inequalities. Take a moment on your own and graph each of these, again, using a different color for each of them. And then I will show you my graph after you have yours. So this is what your graph should look like. I have a little bit more on here already. Don't worry about it too much just yet. But we have in each of these your different parts. So our P must be greater than or equal to 0 is going to be along the y-axis here. Your S must be greater than or equal to 0 is going to be this one just along the x-axis here. You have shirts on the x-axis and P on the y-axis. And then you have two lines, solid lines because it's or equal to for the two things here. We have in pink for me is the amount of fabric you can use. So the maximum you can do is 1,000 shirts, 0 pajamas, or 500 pajamas, 0 shirts, and then connect that line. And then for time, you can have 800 shirts, 0 pajamas, up to about 533 pajamas, 0 shirts. So this is about what your graph should look like. Don't shade anything yet. I should have said that at the front. And then, of course, making a note. Oh, no. So we have different shaded regions here. So I have shaded in green a section and I have shaded in pink a section. And it wants to know what those each are. So we have in green is the section where we have enough, the section constrained by the amount of time we have. So anything below this green line is ones that we have enough time to make. And then below the pink line here is the ones we have enough fabric to make. And then, of course, we have a section that is overlapping. So I just labeled the rest of these for you. The section at the top that doesn't have any shading at all is just there's not enough time or fabric. We definitely can't make them. And then this overlapping section is the ones that have both enough time and fabric to make them. So then what this shows here, each shaded section shows the combination of shirts and pajamas that could be made with each constraint. The overlap of the shaded regions show the possible combinations of shirts and pajamas that can be made with both the amount of time and the amount of fabric the manufacturer has. And then a note that I should have here that I forgot to include is that where S and P are both integers. So that should be a note you have on your graph because you're shading the whole thing. You're not putting individual dots because that's insane. All right, we're almost done with this. I actually think the last couple things you are going to do on your own. So we have these last three. Yep. Identify one example of a solution set in this context. So that's, of course, going to be anything in this double shaded region. For your purposes, you only have to shade the double shaded region. You don't need to do everything. H, identify one ordered pair that is not a solution and explain why. Make sure you explain which inequality it does not satisfy, and then in context what that means. And then, is the solution set discrete or continuous? Reminding yourself if you need to, flip back what those definitions are. You're going to do those three on your own, and then you are going to stop and have your notes checked up to this point. I will add a note on here for that for you. The rest of the lesson you are going to do on your own. I have made notes and annotations to help you with these two problems. So, using my annotations to help you do the rest of the lesson, you will check after you have finished those before you do your exit ticket.